Welcome back, everyone. The Ghana Statistical Service is taking steps to assess the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on businesses in the country. To this end, it is embarking on a business tracker survey to establish how enterprises have been hit. Here, we're going to be speaking with government statistician Professor Samuel Kobnenim. There you see him, who has joined us from his office. It's great to have you this afternoon, sir. Tell us a bit more about this business survey and why you deem it necessary to do so now.
Thank you, Mr. Kwao, and good afternoon. As you rightly said, today, 26th May 2020, Ghana Statistical Service is collaborating with the United Nations Development Programme and the World Bank to roll out a survey to assess the impact of COVID-19 on businesses in Ghana. Specifically, what we seek to do is to ascertain the number of businesses that had to close down because of the partial lockdowns and those that, because of COVID-19 broadly, have been affected by their business activities. Beyond this, we will specifically look at the pathways by which they have been impacted by COVID-19, specifically look at how turnover has played out, how input raw materials have been affected, specifically as a result of the closure of our borders. Although we are aware that goods are moving in and out of countries, we all know that the airline industry has been severely hit by COVID-19 because of the challenges that we had in terms of infection rate across different countries. Another perspective that we're going to look at the impact would be from the job losses point of view and also how financial challenges have impacted on the activities of businesses. The other specific objectives of the business tracker survey is to help us identify pathways that businesses have adopted in terms of technology to cope with the challenges associated with COVID-19. And this will be a platform for knowledge sharing among different businesses in terms of how they can adopt different strategies to cope with the pandemic. This would also help us enumerate best practices that can be shared with businesses. Then finally, it will give us a sense of how businesses can bounce back, specifically from the perspective of the stimulus, that's the 600 million Ghana cedis that the government has put out for businesses to ensure that they stay alive during this period of the pandemic. So what it's going to help us do is that with the pathways that are enumerated earlier on, it would help government begin to shape its interventions and also ask the big question whether the 600 million Ghana cedis is adequate to keep businesses alive. Of businesses that we have, that is businesses that are large in nature, for which reason they are the ones that drive our gross domestic product, and businesses that are in there for survival basis. And we all know that out of the 638,234 business establishments that we have in this country, about 80% of them are micro businesses. And for the large businesses, we have just about 0.39%. So with these statistics, we think the government is in a better position looking at how COVID-19 has impacted on businesses. It would better shape interventions moving forward.
Right.
Also worth mentioning is the fact that businesses in this country, as of 2017, had about 3 million Ghanaians working in establishments. So we are talking about 10% of our entire population that will be impacted one way or the other from the business perspective.
Okay, so ultimately you want to find out how COVID-19 has impacted businesses and how they can be helped. And so could you expand more on how this is going to be carried out at the specific businesses you're going to be approaching? What sort of questions are you going to be asking them?
Thank you very much. So for the first time, Ghana Statistical Service would be approaching the data collection exercise from a telephone interview point of view. So we call it the computer-assisted telephone interview model of data collection. So we are going to use the Integrated Business Establishment Survey as the sampling frame and select 1% of businesses. So we're talking about 6,000 firms. So specifically, we're going to interview about 6,000 firms, which includes our non-response rate. And these firms cut across the different sizes that I talked about, and we envision about 30 to 40 minutes discussion. And as I indicated, the questions would focus on, one, whether you had to close down because of the partial lockdowns, and if you did close up, for how long did you close up, and now that you are still, you've come back to business, the extent to which your activities have not been impacted by the different directives, both globally and nationally. So the perspectives that I talked about in terms of input raw materials, especially for those that get their raw materials from outside the country. So we're going to ask questions in the area of imports and exports, whether the businesses have had to lay people off on different terms in terms of the extent to which COVID-19 is impacting on their resourcefulness, and overall how their profit margins have been impacted and how they've dealt with the pandemic. So it would range from how the business performance indicators have been dealt with by the different businesses, and we'll proceed to the coping strategies and the strategies by which they see themselves as coming back in the next few months.
One quick one before we allow you to go. Last month we saw inflation go up to the highest we have seen in 8 months. Now, most analysts seem to think that things will normalize as we go forward. What do you anticipate will happen going forward with regards to inflation?
Indeed, last month, that is April, we recorded 10.6 inflation, which was the highest since the August 2019 inflation after the rebasing exercise. The rate that we announced last week was heavily impacted by the partial lockdowns and the sort of hedging that a lot of households and market women taking advantage brought about. We envision that the rate might slightly go down, but we don't foresee a situation where it's going to dip to the 7.8 that we recorded in March 2020. So although we anticipate that things will normalize, especially at the time that we are looking forward to hearing some possible ease down process to begin, we expect we're going to return to normalcy, and therefore that panic buying that we did in the early month of April, we don't expect to see same moving forward.
Thank you so much, government statistician. It's great to have you on the marketplace this afternoon, Professor Samuel Kobneni. We appreciate your time with us this afternoon.